Okay.
Welcome to this week's edition of the Rock and Roll Ghost podcast. This week we have Michael Timmins, songwriter, guitarist for Cowboy Junkies, one of my favorite bands. Especially growing up at the time I did, you guys were very important to me.
Cool.
Cowboy Junkies are releasing Such Ferocious Beauty on June 2nd via Cooking Vinyl, and Michael's graciously agreed to talk to me today about the album and the band. How are you doing today, Michael?
I'm good. Good.
So the first question I have is, I mean, you guys have been together, you and Alan were together for years before Cowboy Junkies,
Yeah.
became the thing.
Sure.
And the band, formed in '85. So that's, I mean, we're almost talking 40 years now.
Yeah.
How do you manage to keep, going? I mean, what is the driving force? All of you have been, no one's left the band.
Yeah.
Keep making albums. I mean, you've made around 30 studio live and compilation albums
Yeah.
in your career. I mean, just how is it, everybody's just easygoing, or how do you maintain, this core band for so long?
I mean, I think part of it's easygoing. Three of us are siblings, so we have a sort of a, that can be a negative, I guess, in some situations.
Yeah.
With us, it's good. Like there's 6 kids in all in our family, so the three of us happen to have a good way of dealing with one another. Alan, as you may know, I've known Alan forever. I've been in bands with him before Cowboy Junkies, and I've known him before my brother Pete, who's in the band, was born. So I've known him long. So we just have history with each other, obviously, and we like doing what we do. We really enjoy playing together. Like, this band has always been about. It's defined by the four of us, like how the four of us come together, right? So if you take one of those elements out, it can still continue, I guess, but it wouldn't be the same. And I don't know how long it would last, because there's something, we recognize very early on, there's something special about the way we communicate musically. And we all really just like the sound. So, it's intoxicating, there's a little bit of a addiction to it. It's just like, we just really love doing it. So that's why, if there's ever any problems or issues, we try and get through them. We try and figure them out so that the music can continue. It's just the music is more important than anything. So that's why we just try and make sure that we deal with any issues.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, you talk about, siblings. I mean, look at the Kinks and Oasis and Black Crowes. I mean, all those bands, I think at one point or another ended up having a fist fight on stage.
Yeah.
So, the fact, but you guys are also kind of more of a mellow, group it's not quite that high thing, but
we're Canadian.
You know what? I was actually going to say that kind of as a joke. Canadians are just generally nicer.
A little more laid back.
Yeah. Like the Southern California
there you go.
people. Did you ever imagine that you'd be doing this nearly 40 years later? I mean, when you guys first got together, you made the first couple of albums, and then Trinity Session kind of, leapt off.
Yeah.
Could you even imagine back then doing this long?
Not necessarily. It wasn't. We didn't sort of form, and then the next day say, "Hey, we're going to be together making records and touring successfully for 40 years." It's like, you don't really do that certainly when you're young. 40 years is an eternity.
Yeah.
But I certainly, as a young musician, I sort of remember making a very conscious decision that I was going to make music for my life. That's what I was going to do. Whether I had to get another job to support myself was fine. That was irrelevant. That was going to be my life. And but I knew that a big part of it would be, the focus of it would be making music. So I certainly knew that from my point of view, or I made that decision that was my goal. Whether I didn't necessarily know that this band would be the center of it, because you can't predict that. That'd be crazy. But we did used to talk in the early days even about longevity and about having a legacy, that when we're making records and thinking about them, we wanted to make sure that we always thought that the recorded music was the legacy. That's what we're leaving behind, you know.
Yeah.
And we wanted to make sure that we were proud of that. So we did have a sort of a sense of long term. You know, we didn't know how long that would go, but it wasn't always just about today, you know. It was we did have a sort of sense of creating something to go forward with.
Yeah. How, thinking back to those early days, I mean, you guys recorded the first album, White Soft Earth Now, in your
Yeah.
garage, one microphone, then you went to the Trinity Church
Yeah.
to record Trinity, you know, Trinity sessions. Again, one microphone. I obviously I heard Trinity before I heard the first one. I
Sure.
think it was, you know, the label ended up re-releasing it a year or so after
Yeah.
Trinity kind of hit. But I
Yeah.
remember when I got that album, I don't know. I mean, there's no other word to say it, completely obsessed. I played that cassette over and over. In fact, there's a couple of cassettes I've had in my life where there's like some weird little hiccup. It was that one, and it was Tom Petty's Southern accents. Both had like this weird little thing. And so to this day, when I hear the moments those were supposed to, you know, were on the cassette, like now if I'm listening to, you know, a CD or, you know, online, I still hear that.
Like, yeah,
that weird little glitch thing that for whatever reason the cassette, you know, sometimes had.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you know, that album came out, I think I was 16 or 17.
Okay.
And I was into way different, you know, I wasn't as far into, you know, alternative as some people were with college radio and everything. But, you know, like I saw the video on MTV and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. You know,
Cool.
And I didn't even know who the Velvet Underground were when
Right.
Sister Jane,
Sweet Jane, yeah.
Sweet Jane, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of Sister Ray or something.
Yeah.
I'm getting my Velvet Underground confused.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know who they were at the time. I knew who Lou Reed was, you know. I probably heard of Velvet Underground, but I certainly didn't know them, you know, that's for
Right.
sure. So to me, I thought that was a new song. And then I think at some point one of the VJs said, oh, it's a cover. Blah, blah, blah.
Right.
I was like, oh, okay, well, cool. But that album it's weird because it seems extremely of the moment, but it also feels like you could have plucked that from like field recordings in some cases. I mean, obviously that's probably the album you probably talk about or get asked about the most.
Sure.
You know, how amazing is it to you that album kind of just feels particularly timeless?
Yeah, I mean, that, you know, it's special in any band's career or any band's catalog to have an album like that. You know, it's very rare, right? Like it's you know, what you might call a classic album. You know, it's pretty amazing to have that. And you know, I think the reason why it comes across as timeless is just because it was recorded. Like it's not recorded with any gadgets of the era. I mean, in some ways it is, because it's a one microphone recording, a very high tech microphone. And it was recorded to digital tape, oddly enough, very early digital tape. But still, the way it was recorded with the one microphone and just relying on the performance of the musicians and allowing the musicians to determine the mix by the dynamics between them, that's the way music was made for decades, right? Before multi-tracking came in the late 50s. So. And even then, in the late 50s, they would sit around one microphone often, or even a couple of microphones, but it'd be a performance-based thing. So
yeah,
I think that's why it has sort of a timelessness to it, because the music is modernish, you know, in its interpretations of some of the songs, but the recording is very old school. But it doesn't sound like a field recording. It doesn't have all the crackles and the imperfections of that old style recording. It's a very clean recording because it's modern. So it has these weird kind of mixture of very old and very sort of the time technology. So I think maybe that's why the timelessness comes across. And there's nothing in there that you can listen to and go, okay, well that's a Lindrum, therefore it's a 1980s recording. You know, it's just all kind of very basic instrumentation that have been around for hundreds of years. So I think that's part of it too.
Yeah, and I mean, very early on, you guys were doing covers, and you just the last album you put out last year was a covers album completely.
Yeah.
And one of your biggest influences, I remember, you guys were the reason why I knew who Townes Van Zandt was.
Sure.
And you guys had a pretty special relationship with him.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about like getting to meet him for the first time, and what was your relationship to his music before, and how did you meet him, and then how did you ended up collaborating with him too?
Yeah.
How did that all come about?
Well, we were huge Townes Van Zandt fans. When we were touring as a very young band, when we were touring White Suffragist Now, and even before that, we had a cassette as well of that somebody put together for us of a compilation of his songs, and which we called the Townes tape. And usually late at night when we were driving from one gig to the next town, somebody would say, "Put on the Townes tape." So we'd listen to Townes, and we all kind of discovered him together at the same time. We sort of got into his music and became huge fans. There was a occasion at one point along that tour that we happened to be in Atlanta, and it was my birthday, and Townes was playing at a little club nearby. So we went and saw him, and that was like phenomenal experience. We didn't even speak to him. We were too scared to speak to him.
Yeah,
we went to both. He was doing 2 shows in one night. So I think we hid in the bathroom after the first show and went to the second show. And then when we released our, Trinity Session came out a couple years after that, put us up on a bigger stage, and we were releasing Caution Horses, which was our third record, and we wanted an opening act. And so we were sitting around brainstorming with our manager about, who to have. And I think we just said, well, how about Townes Van Zandt? And we kind of all looked at each other, can we do that? Does it make sense? And we felt we should be opening for him rather than the other way around.
Exactly.
But Townes at that point especially was at a very low ebb in his career. And so we called him up, and luckily his wife at the time knew of the band. She'd heard Trinity, and she knew that, she knew a little bit about us. So I think she convinced him to take advantage of this and to go out on tour with us. So we went out on the road and with him. And one of his conditions for coming out was that he wanted to travel with us on our bus. Like, he didn't want to have to, haul himself around. So we said, sure, let's do it. So we got to know him really well because, not only did he opened for us. Like, sometimes you have an opening act and you hardly ever see each other,
Mm-hmm.
But, he traveled with us and went, slept in the same hotels and did this, we went to the same truck stops, whatever. We lived together for about 2 months. So we got to know him really well, and did a little playing together. And while we were touring, he was writing, and so that's how the collaborations happened. And so, yeah, it was pretty great. It was a great experience.
That's great. Hold on, I'm gonna dog. Go ahead, get down. She's an old girl. She doesn't like to jump down. Well, no, that's great because I mean, like I said, you guys were the ones that got me into his music. So.
Oh, good.
All right. Well, I'm going to switch. I mean, I talked a bit about your past, but if we could talk about the new album, which is Such Ferocious Beauty. Again, it's coming out June 2nd on Cooking Vinyl. You guys have already done some tour dates. You came through Chicago, and I missed you, but you're coming back.
Yeah.
Play the Old Town School of Folk Music again. Didn't you just played it, right?
Yeah, we just did 2 shows there.
Yeah. Just, I guess, first of all, talk about how touring works for you guys now. This tour seems a little kind of low key. Old Town is, not like a.
Yeah.
I haven't actually been there, but I know it's it's not exactly a huge space. Are you kind of like just kicking the tires and then going?
No, I mean, we tour all the time now, so, and we don't really attach our tours necessarily to an album, especially these days. You have to book a tour 6-8 months in advance. So,
right.
and putting out a record is, again, there's so many delays in these days. So we don't let one control the other. And, even if we're not on an album cycle, we're a new album cycle, we're always touring. That's what we do. Like, we're always out there. So we want to keep it pretty easy and pretty small. We like to keep ourselves these days, make it simple, right? So there's 5 band members and there's 2 crew, and that's it. And we don't want to travel with lights, and we don't want to travel with a light man, and we don't want to, So in order to do that, we tend to play smaller places, maybe a higher ticket price, but so the shows are kind of more special for those who are there, and it's easier for us to do. We can roll into town, do a sound check, do the show, and we're gone. So it's not a big production, right? So, and we tend to do shows. We tend to do our tours fairly regional. So the one in May is a little bit more of it crosses regions, but usually like we'll go to the Midwest and we'll do Chicago, we'll do Ann Arbor, we'll do Cleveland, we'll do the area. Then we'll go home for a few weeks, and then we'll go out again for another week or over 2 weekends and do like a Northeast area. And so we keep things pretty easy, and if we're out too long, it's too tired. It's too hard for us at our age. It's really exhausting to be on the road. But we love playing live. We love the show, but the traveling is very hard. So we're just trying to keep it simple and easy. And again, you talked about how do you keep together. The way you do that is you make sure that you're not overtaxing yourself. You make sure that physically things are still enjoyable, because if it gets too hard physically, then everything falls apart. So we just want to make sure that we're continuing to enjoy it. And so keeping shows at very low stress, very low, not a whole lot of logistics involved. That's how we do it.
Yeah. Because you guys have probably run the gamut of touring over the years.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we used to do the multi-bus tours with a semi and out for, 6 to 7, 8 weeks at a time. And, year-long tour, it was insane, but we were younger then, and we were experimenting, and we were trying to create a space for us in the industry. So that was that time. We had a much bigger organization. That just became really tiring and boring and exhausting, and it started to impinge on the music, right? The enjoying of making music. Yeah. So we in around 2000 we decided to pull back and just let's go back to very independent roots. Let's get rid of all this strata of behind the scenes people and just make it really clean, make it really just focus on making music, making records. We knew how to make records. We can get records out yourselves. At that point, the internet was coming along, so it was easier to being more directly in touch with your audience. Let's just get right back to basics and just enjoy have fun. Like, make sure this still is fun, because it was becoming not fun. It was becoming more about the business and more about having meetings with people and having to get approvals to do stuff. We just want to get rid of that. So that's how we survived. It's because I think a lot of bands get overwhelmed and they get burnt out, right? So it's easy to get burnt out if you're not in control of all aspects of things, because people have demands. So we kind of got rid of stuff and just sort of pulled back and said, this is how we want to make music and enjoy ourselves. So that's what we do.
Yeah, well, also, I think a lot of bands at certain levels also want to keep up appearances that they're at that same level.
Yes,
it's exactly. Like that seems to be cost and effective, maybe.
Yeah, that's very true. It's all about, and we don't give a shit about that. We never have. we never have. We've never cared about that. So, I guess if you put the 3 shows we've just done, which we'll have done in Chicago over the last 2 months, that's 1,500 people. We could go into a bigger club and do one show, and it looks cooler, but the show wouldn't be as much fun for us. It probably wouldn't be as good for the audience. And why? Like, if we can do it this way and it's enjoyable for us and we can do really great shows and the audience, it's special for the audience, then let's do it like that. I don't care what people think about who we live up here in Toronto, and 95% of the people I meet who wouldn't know who I am, and they say, "Oh, you're in Cowboy Junkies, yeah. Are you guys still together?" I get that all the time.
Yeah.
Like,
just think about how many bands and artists have come out since you guys started. It's like
and gone away.
Right. It's like, well, there's always more music. There's always more stuff happening, and it's like, so bands like yours really has to kind of define who you actually are in the moment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So.
I think that's amazing that you guys are one of those groups that figured it out.
Yeah, I do too. That's one of our prides. Like, that's one of the things that we sort of can go, we have survived this, and it's hard. It's a very hard business to survive in, and we make a living at it. We make a living at it for not the first few years, but 30 years. So it's a hard gig, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, at this point, you're committed. I mean, there's
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
it's
yeah.
not like you're going to go back to college and get a
No,
business
no,
degree.
we're done now. Yeah, exactly, exactly.
I mean, I'm guessing you've got kids. Maybe you have
Yeah.
grandkids at this point.
No grandkids. Three
Okay.
kids.
All
I
right.
got 3 kids. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank God.
I mean,
Grandkids. Yeah.
you know, it's it's the way things went, and
Yeah.
that's cool. You were always a big presence here in Chicago on WXRT. How important were they to kind of keeping you guys going?
Oh, there's a few stations, like XRT was one of them. XPN was another, FUV is another. There's a few stations around the country that and are still very supportive in many ways, some of them. So yeah, that whole, well, I guess back then, I don't know what's called now, but back then it's probably called AAA, non-commercial radio or whatever it was. I don't know. XRT might be a bit different. That was huge for us, and some of them are still very supportive. They'll still invite us in to do interviews or to play a couple of songs acoustically. So, and that's why Chicago is a really good market for us, because of XRT. Like in those days, they were very supportive, and we did a lot of stuff with them, and that was very helpful.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I got away from the album,
That's okay.
Ferocious Beauty. I know that a lot of the album, you're the main songwriter of the band.
Yeah.
And a lot of the album was a response to how you were dealing with your father's passing, which obviously affected, 6 children and
Sure.
however many, people are in your family.
Yeah.
How was it therapeutic or cathartic to write about him? And was it necessary for you to get that out?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's therapeutic. I've always from the very beginning, I've always written about what's happening in my world, whether it be personally or sociologically or whatever. Like, it's always about where I am in my life, and which kind of reflects directly on my brothers and sisters usually as well, and also on Alan. We're all the same kind of age, so we're all kind of we all inhabit that same cycle of getting married and having kids and people dying. It's sort of the same arc.
Yeah.
So and I think really that's another reason why we've kept an audience, is because we've kind of written about things that affect them too. There's a certain relationship between our audience, I think, and our music, and part of that is because the songs are about what's happening, in our lives, and they're not just about, we didn't start out as 23-year-olds and we're still writing about things now, and we're 63 that pretending that we're 23. We're not talking about going out partying and stuff. We're talking about what's going on in our lives, and one of those things for a lot of us is losing a parent, and at this point or in one's life. So it's I think that's part of our longevity, is that we be able to maintain an audience because we're writing about stuff and expressing stuff that they're feeling, that they can connect with, and have been able to over the years, so that's a big part of it.
Yeah. And I've gathered that from what I've read, that you spent a little more time kind of working it out before you got to the studio on this time. What was the reason for that approach?
It was more of me and Margo getting together, and Margo takes a long time to get into a song, like to figure it out and to sort of really inhabit it. And obviously the only way the song is going to succeed is if Margo can really put it across. So again, it was COVID, so we were off the road. So we had the time and the opportunity. I rented a house up. Margo lives north of Toronto, so I rented a house up there and did a lot of writing, and would go up there for a few weeks on end and write, and then she'd come over. I rented a house about 20 minutes from her, so she would come over in the afternoon, and I'd play her new song, and she'd learn it, and we'd just play it back and forth. And so it was just the way for a natural and easy way for her to get into the songs, to inhabit them. And then so by the time we went to the studio with the rest of the band, she was well ahead of them. So we were able to play to her, as opposed to us creating music and then her having to sort of figure out a way into that music. It's sort of, we were able to work around the vocal a little bit. So it was just a part of it was circumstance, because I say it was COVID and we were off the road, so I had lots of time on my hands, so I could do that. Right. And it's a good way to do it. It was fun.
Yeah, so that's different than how you've done things before, then, I gather.
It's every record's kind of different, but um, certainly in the earlier days, we would do much more of that, of sort of working on songs as a band, and I'd write them, and then we work them, kind of create them all together. But because of life circumstance, people's schedules, sometimes albums tend to be more put together in pieces, and then we come together and then record. And it depends, it all depends. And often what happens too is with records is we'll take songs out on the road and workshop them a bit on the road, so that the band can get in, figure them out as a unit. Right. And then go and record them. But again, because of COVID, we're off the road for almost 2 years or a year and a half, so we couldn't do that. So this was another way of doing that.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a cool idea. I mean, actually, because like you said, I mean, it's you may write the songs, but when Margo kind of
puts them
gets
across,
her voice around it,
absolutely,
it might change in some way.
For sure.
Do you ever have like conflict with? Well, no, I wrote it this way. This is how I want you to do it, or are you easy with everybody's a creative, so their input is valid?
Yeah, everybody's input's valid. There are certainly times when there's a line or something or a melody that she's missed, or a phrasing that say what, this line was written this way. For me, it's important that this line be phrased this way, or this is a good melody you've missed, and often she'll come up with something different too, which I go, oh, that's much better. I'm not precious about it. It's like whatever's best. So if there's something that I feel is better, then I would mention it to her, and if she comes up with something that's better than what I've done, it's like, yeah, let's go with that, go in that direction. That's great. So it depends. That's all part of the process.
It doesn't seem like there's much ego in the band.
No.
Now, I don't know.
Everybody knows what they do good. We all know that. So we're all quite happy to have that person do their job.
Yeah. Now it definitely seems like, I mean, between being together so long, probably circumstantial, like how you were raised, and the Canadian factor.
I think so.
I absolutely love Canada. I can't believe I haven't gone there. I've gone as far as Detroit north.
You're right.
I mean, I know I could basically just go over a bridge and be in Canada. So I'm dying. I think my first. I know everybody likes Toronto and Vancouver, but I really want to go to Quebec.
Oh yeah, Montreal's great. Great. Very. Those three cities are very, very different. So
no, completely. Yeah.
Well, just so you know, I got a call at noon. So another one at noon. So.
Okay, well, no, that's fine.
Yep.
This is perfectly fine. I can wrap up here. I was going to ask you one more question, but it was insignificant. So, well, Michael, I really appreciate you taking the time today.
Pleasure.
I wish you good luck. Hopefully, I'll be able to check out the old school show in May.
Cool.
All right, man. You have a great rest of your day.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Bye.
Bye.